Okay, so could you repeat your name, please?
So my name's Blake Boulton. I'm a principal investigator with IBAC, the
Okay.
Anti-Corruption Commission.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that you've already received an email or letter previously from IBAC confirming that we're investigating a complaint you made about Victoria Police attending your property and the arrest
Yes. Yes.
in January 22.
Yes.
So you got a letter saying that IBAC's going to commence that investigation.
Mm-hmm.
Purpose of my call today was merely just to touch base with you and let you know that I'm the investigator who's leading that matter.
Okay, that's great.
So as far as you're concerned, Shivesh, number one, are you happy to be called Shivesh? Do you have a
Yes.
preferred name?
No. Shavesh is fine.
Sure, that's fine. Number two is obviously, you're the complainant, and this thing happened to you. The police were at your house. You were there, so I do want to speak to you and get your side of the story.
Yes.
Your version of events. What's your preferred way of keeping in touch with me?
Okay.
Email or
So, Mr. Bolton, is it? Should I call you
Yes.
Blake or?
Just call me Blake.
Okay. So, Blake, I also have a lot of evidence, as you may have been advised by IBAC. The events that took place at my house were recorded.
Yep. I've got a recording. It's a 4-hour audio clip.
Yeah, for our audio recording, yes, it's been digitally enhanced. So you should have the original version. You should have the enhanced version. The enhanced version has been posted on YouTube. Victoria Police have admitted the authenticity of the recording.
Yep.
So all of this has happened during court proceedings. I want to give you the recordings and transcripts of those proceedings. I want to give you affidavits where we've collected all the evidence. And
Right. Yep.
we've basically, so I'm also criminally prosecuting Olney. I'm pursuing a charge sheet that's been approved, and so we're doing those things simultaneously. And there's a lot of evidence that we've been, accumulating. And
Yep.
what we want to do is give you, as much help to speed these things as possible in terms of.
Well, that's good. That makes my job easier.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
So I think if you could send me an email, I will send you a summary of all the evidential documents that we have.
Yep. Yep.
And I will also send you what specific criminal laws we allege that they've broken. And both in relation to the Crimes Act, but also the IBAC Act. So from our end, it's at a very sophisticated stage. We've been working closely with lawyers, and we're now going to engage tort lawyers to basically go after the police for tort law claims. But I have personally been spearheading the specific legal strategy. So I'm going to send you a list of all the allegations that we're making and who did what.
One thing I will just make clear, Shivesh, my investigation, IBAC's a little bit different to when the police investigate something. Obviously, when the police look at something, they're going for,
I know you're only looking at the IBAC charges under the IBAC Act.
No. The police just focus on crimes, whereas IBAC will focus on police misconduct generally, which is a much more open definition than just criminal activity.
Yes.
So yeah, of course, criminal offences committed by police are relevant, and I'll look at that. But broadly, whether it's misconduct or discipline or what have you, whether it's systemic things, whatever, that's all sort of what I'm looking at.
Oh, fantastic.
Limited to crime, yeah.
That's great. So then I will give you that context as well. Also, I think the most important thing from my perspective is to make sure that you know exactly what has happened in these matters, because there have been a few court proceedings, and in those court proceedings there have been determinations made and admissions made already.
Okay, yeah.
All of them are overwhelmingly against the police. So Justice Gane has made some comments about, the on the face what the recordings show. Then the Magistrates Court of Victoria, Magistrate Williams, who was hearing the matter, has also made very serious preliminary findings against Mr. Olney. He's basically said that. So Mr. Olney had alleged that I had a criminal record to get the search warrant, and I don't. He had also alleged that I was the director of companies and so on. I'm just giving you context about what it is that you can look forward to in the matters that have been already discussed in court. So all these matters have already been discussed before Mr. Olney. Mr. Olney has admitted or not given any justification for what the court considered to be, misconduct on its face. And then there are other, so that's one set of issues. And then another issue that we have, which we are currently, trying to get a resolution about, and which I think IBAC will be interested in, is that Ms. Zhu had a phone on which she had recorded on video the initial police misconduct in arresting me. The police then arrested her specifically to destroy that evidence or to seize that evidence. And this was caught on audio recording. Initially, when I had complained to IBAC, I had emphasized that it's important that IBAC get hold of that phone because it was specifically seized.
So this is separate to the audio recording that I've...
That's right. The audio recording was on my phone,
Okay.
which was seized, but my phone was automatically backed up to the cloud.
Right.
My assistant's phone was not backed up to the cloud, and the video of the arrest is still physically on her phone. And now that all the charges have been dropped, there is no reason that the police should still have that phone. They've still not returned it to us. They had initially told us that within 28 days of the charges being dropped, everything would be returned. The charges were dropped on the 2nd of May.
Yep.
We've still not got it. So I think IBAC would be interested in that phone because Ms. Burke, who was the officer in charge on the day, has admitted that she only arrested Ms. Zhu to get hold of that phone. She said that in the audio recording that we have privately, that was made without her knowledge that it would be made and given to me. So I will, if you send me your email address, I will send you a summary of all the evidence that I would like you to know that I have and give it to you, and then also give you a brief overview of the landscape in terms of what's going on in the proceedings. I
appreciate that. The one thing I just want to sort of cut off at the pass, and I don't mean this to disappoint you in any way as such. I understand what you're saying insofar as either particular preliminary reviews or findings might have been expressed by judges or magistrates.
Yeah, no.
But I'll still have to investigate this.
Absolutely.
As well.
No, I wouldn't. See, I disagree that those findings go far enough. So I absolutely want you to investigate because I think there's more that should be done. But the reason why I'm pointing that out is because it gives you context.
Yeah.
And the most important context there is that those allegations have not been refuted by the police. In some cases, they have been openly admitted in the sense that Mr. Olney's lawyer said that, yes, those statements were untrue, but the court hasn't found that they were fraudulently untrue and not incompetently untrue.
Yeah.
This is about the fact that I didn't have a criminal record.
Yeah. Right.
So where there have been admissions made, it will also help your investigation to the extent that when you do interrogate or have an interview with the people against whom complaints are made, you can put to them about those relevant events. So they're helpful in that sense. But yes, I know that unless there's a court ruling formally, it's not a binding matter, and also the evidence has not been considered exhaustively, so it's not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'll still have to go and
Absolutely.
look at things and understand the lay of the land
No,
myself.
we're on the same page, and I'm not asking for anything from anyone that I can't demand, just so none of my demands can be dismissed as unreasonable. So I know that I'm asking for a lot of things, and that's why it's important that everything I ask is backed by reasonableness. So we're very thorough, and that's why it's taken us this long in prosecuting the claims against the police, because we've and you'll see when you see the evidence, it's been meticulously collected, and it was the judicial registrar that was mediating our dispute with IBAC that had pointed out that we had effectively saved IBAC hundreds of thousands of dollars in all the work that we had already done. So I want you to benefit from that.
Well, cool. That does make life a lot easier. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And so the other question I sort of had was, obviously if you're mentioning sort of different court matters there and different proceedings, and I'm assuming that as part of that you probably prepared affidavits and statements and whatever that go to your involvement. So like obviously as part of it, from my perspective, I would want an account from you at some point that says yes.
Yes, absolutely.
I woke up this morning, this is what happened, then I turned on my recorder and then this happened.
We'll give you statements.
Okay, I was going to say, and you don't have to answer me now. I generally want that in the form of a witness statement. You can, prepare an affidavit if you're more comfortable with your own.
I'm happy to give you, come into your office and give you a statement if you want.
All right. Cool.
And
I'm not saying straight away, but down the track, probably fairly early on in the piece, we'll need to cover that off as well.
Yeah, whenever. I mean, I am fairly busy, but
it sounds like it.
Within I'll find time every weekend, any given weekend, or after hours any week. But otherwise, I think within a week's time, I'm generally able to work something up. So I'm ready in terms of the facts being all documented. So okay. I don't need any time, and much of what we will send you will clarify everything for you. We have prepared some elaborate accounts, and the affidavits go into a lot of detail about exactly what has been done wrong. And once you read it, you will get some coordinates, I guess. And of course, you'll investigate yourself, but it'll give you some context. And then whenever you're ready, I and Ms. Xu, who was also arrested that day.
Very good. That was my next question about her involvement in terms of giving a statement as well, so that's good.
Yeah, she's been very eager to, have the police deal with it rather than us. Yep. So, the police and IBAC, so she's been holding her breath. So yeah, she's going to be available. And then Mr. Ansel was also critically involved in the sense that he was my lawyer who had basically been trying to communicate with the police that day. So when I was arrested, they did not let me speak with the lawyer for half a day because they didn't have a search warrant. And they were concerned that the lawyer would turn up at my house and, demand to see a search warrant and so on and so forth. So they refused to let me speak with the lawyer. The police officer who I had been complaining about this to has noted in his statement that I wasn't allowed to speak with the lawyer. And the reason he's given is that under Section 465 they've said, of the Crimes Act, they've said that they were concerned that the evidence will be destroyed if I'm allowed to speak with a lawyer, because I will get the lawyer to, I don't know how furniture could be destroyed, of which I had receipts of ownership. But the other thing was, I then told them that, well, I can speak with a legal aid lawyer. And all of these things were also then ultimately, when Ms. Xu was released that day at night, she went and spoke with Mr. Ansel. Mr. Ansel then contacted the police station. So his involvement is also critical from that perspective. And then the following day, he went.
Were you interviewed? Sorry to cut you off.
Yes.
Were you interviewed in that intervening time?
I was interviewed that evening. I was put in the cell for 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
Before I was finally interviewed. And just before I was interviewed, they called legal aid. So that happened just before the thing. But Mr. Ansel then represented me in court the following day. And he had some exchanges with the prosecutor. The prosecutor actually later called him on his private mobile to basically strong arm him and ask him to back off when he made a few complaints against the prosecution. So Mr. Ansel had written to the VGSO and the commissioner's office, not to the prosecutor directly, and the prosecutor then called him on his cell phone and said that he had heard through the grapevine or something, and that he didn't want Mr. Ansel to get into any trouble. So all those matters Mr. Ansel has put on affidavit in court proceedings. And
is that a police prosecutor or
yes, police officer Watson, Senior Constable Watson. When those allegations were made, he recused himself from further involvement in that proceeding. So that happened. Plus, we've discovered correspondence between the police, and they are absolutely nasty and abusive against Mr. Ansel. Basically, they say stuff like the lawyer has started a shit show with paper warfare, and they basically then started sabotaging his career and making allegations of all sorts to the LSB against him. The LSB then further did a number of improper things and colluded with the police. They tried to pressurize Mr. Ansel to also back off the complaints that he was making on my behalf. Their concern was that that I was spearheading the complaints, which I was. All the complaints were Mr. Ansel was essentially conveying my point to the extent that it was not improper to convey those points. The complaints were made on my behalf, and what they were trying to do was stop him from making those serious accusations. He, of course, did his own made his own judgment about whether or not it was proper to make those accusations, and we've never, tried to be evasive about the fact that ultimately I wanted to take an aggressive position against the police for what they had done, and they basically demonized him and attacked him for it. So this is all in correspondence that's been discovered in court proceedings. They've attacked him, and they've internally tried to. We have correspondence between the police talking about how they have to basically suppress all the evidence and get lawyers who will cooperate with the suppression of the evidence. They have also admitted in correspondence that the whole point of all of this is to get a criminal conviction against me so I can be kicked out of the country, because otherwise I'm going to be a headache for them for a long time. And This is
I'll just, I think it might be worth me mentioning, and I'll send you a letter that tells you this anyway. But basically, so in terms of where the limits of my investigation are, so I'm looking at unlawful entry, remaining upon and searching the Point Crook property on the 6th of January, 22. I'm looking at relying on unlawfully obtained information in the application for the search warrant. I'm looking at threats or conspiring to assault you or miss you. And I'm looking at false or misleading statements that the police have given with the statements or court submissions subsequently about what happened on that day.
And also, they have elicited false statements.
Right. Yeah. So that's sort of the bounds of what I'm looking at. I understand that there's obviously other things that are going on that.
No, but Blake, the issue here is that all the other things that I'm talking about, they provide the motivation for why they've done this. So I have email exchanges between police officers that predate that exchange, and what they're saying in those exchanges is that they have to try everything they can to get some convictions against me, because if they don't, then and I get citizenship, then it will be very difficult to kick me out, and I'll be pain in their ass for decades to come. Whereas now that obviously is a motive. So I'm not gonna.
As in, you suspect it's a motive for, that initial attendance at your address.
Of course it is. Of course it is. I mean, they're talking about. They're talking about the fact that, so they came to my house, they seized goods that they knew were mine, or they had received no complaints about. They're talking about it. The sergeant in charge wants to seize property that is not authorized by the search warrant, is actually explicitly ruled out, and I would say forbidden. Vehicles, for instance, the search warrant explicitly said that no vehicles were to be seized. What she did was she saw a truck parked up. Now, this was even before the search warrant was issued, so she wouldn't even know that the search warrant would forbid it. But she sees the truck parked outside. She says, let's seize it. The informant says, on what basis? She says, well, we'll fill it up with goods from inside the house and then say it was being used in the commission of the crime. And then he says, what, just fill it up? And she says, yeah. And then when they open the truck, it already has things inside. And then she says, well, it saves us the effort of filling it up with goods. This is caught on audio recording.
Yeah.
And it's posted on YouTube. Now, this is the motivation we're talking about. And right from the start, she's talking to police officers and she's saying that this is going to be a big matter because she was coordinating with the Channel 9 guy. I'm suing him for defamation from previous broadcasts. So she was being incentivized by the Channel 9 person. And basically, I had started the defamation proceeding against him back then, which was halted until the conclusion of these proceedings because I wanted to join the police. Now I'm recommencing those defamation proceedings. So this guy had been saying that I'm a crook. I started suing him for defamation, so he got the police to corroborate his allegations against me. And they have openly admitted that the core evidence that they had was the allegation that Channel 9 had made, that I have a lot of property in my garage.
Yeah.
Now, that property came from the fact that we had an accommodation services business, which was wrapped up during the pandemic. And, out of over 100 apartments, for some of the apartments, a lot of the stuff was stored in warehousing sites, but some of the, appliances were stored in the garage.
Yeah.
And they basically took the Channel 9, tabloid reporter's word on the fact that everything must be stolen. And they barged into my house without any proof that the goods were stolen. They're discussing it, that they didn't even have a complaint that those goods were stolen. And by the way, they wanted to return the goods 2 days later. And I
Return them to you or to
returned them to me
right.
with the truck. This is, by the way, also an admitted fact. So he called me. I was my matter's been called. I'm gonna leave in 1 minute. But basically, I refused to take the truck and the goods because I wanted them to admit that they didn't have a proper basis.
Right.
And then, so I wanted them to give me a reason why they had seized the goods in the first place. They refused to do that, and then they alleged that all the goods were stolen. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, right, okay, yeah, right.
Okay, my matter's been called now. It's 4 o'clock as well, so I'll.
Just your